Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibis? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. It's good to have you here. It's already Wednesday. The week's flying by, at least for me. We are getting so close to Christmas. I've got to get on the ball, getting my Christmas shopping done. It's such a stressful time of the year. I wish it weren't that way. Just to tell you guys how scatterbrained I've been lately, I didn't even do a music fact on the last episode. I can't tell you if I've ever forgotten to do one, but we got one for today. So, music fact of the day. Paul McCartney holds the title of the wealthiest musician in the world. He has a net worth of about $1.2 billion. We're going to get into this new filing by Donna Adelson and her attorneys. Before we get into that, just a little note, her arraignment is going to be on December 12th at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. Not sure if that's going to be streamed, but if it is, we'll carry it on the YouTube page and watch it together. Speaking of YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, share the channel. I appreciate you. We're also going to get into some of Jeff's interview today. I really didn't think that I would do a lot of his police interview, but at the same time, once I started watching it, man, he really lays it bare and gives such good insight. I mean, this dude called it very early on. I mean, he had a very good overall picture of how he thinks this went down. But let's get into this filing. This is an emergency motion to enjoin the jail for an independent psychological evaluation or release to house arrest. Fat chance, Donna, but I guess it doesn't hurt to ask. Well, let's read through this. Donna Sue Adelson, pursuant to the United States Constitution, hereby moves this court to enjoin the Leon County Jail from subjecting her to her current conditions of confinement and direct the Leon County Jail to place Donna in a unit where she can prepare for trial and speak to her family or conduct an independent psychological evaluation in order to be placed in a different unit where she can properly prepare for trial and speak to her family. Alternatively, she requests to be placed on house arrest coupled with standard conditions of pretrial release, and in support thereof states as follows. The introduction. Donna Adelson, a 73-year-old grandmother, was arrested in Miami, Florida on November 13th, 2023, after her son, Charles Adelson, was convicted of murdering Dan Markel in an alleged murder-for-hire plot. The evidence against Donna is circumstantial at best. While Donna has been charged with a crime, there is a presumption of innocence in this country. Donna is entitled to a fair trial, has a right to counsel, and has a right against cruel and unusual punishment. To date, all of Donna's rights have been violated despite the presumption of innocence in place. We go into another section, the arrest and time in Miami-Dade County. On November 13th, 2023, Donna was arrested and transported to the TGK jail in Miami-Dade. Upon arrival to the jail, Donna was placed in a psychiatric unit because of the charges against her. Can I just say, on the phone calls, the 30-plus hour phone calls she had with her son Charlie the week after he was convicted, she said she would kill herself if she couldn't get away. So, all right, moving on. She was placed in an isolation cell with a small sink, a mattress on the floor, a blanket, and a toilet. Donna did not have access to any clothes, cups, silverware, books, blankets, or toiletries, and was only permitted to shower once. Although she had access to counsel, she was not permitted to use the phone to contact family members. Following 2 psychiatric evaluations, Donna was cleared within 96 hours of her arrest and placed in general population, where she was able to contact her family and attorney. Donna's mental state has not changed since the determination by psychiatrists at the jail. Another section is transportation to Leon County Jail. On November 20th, 2023, around noon, Donna was picked up from the TGK jail and transported to Leon County Jail. Her transporters placed her in the back of the transport vehicle with no water. Several hours into the journey, Donna tried to get the attention of the officers because she needed water and a restroom stop, but she was not able to get their attention. Approximately 4 to 5 hours into the trip, when the officers finally checked on her, Donna was shaking, dehydrated, and unable to stand up or move. As a result, the officers had to call paramedics to a rest stop. Leon County Jail. Upon arrival at the Leon County Jail, officials put her in the infirmary under direct observation. She was then placed in a small solitary unit with a toilet, a sink, a mattress on the floor, and a dirty blanket. She has requested a book or Bible, but has not been given anything and has been forced to eat her food with her hands. The day after arriving at the Leon County Jail, one of the jail's mental health officials began questioning Donna about medications she was taking before she was arrested. Donna felt uncomfortable during this interaction because she could not not see the official's face and wanted to verify that they were, in fact, a healthcare professional, but the official would not verify. When Donna made her concerns known, the official told Donna that Donna is a fancy white lady who murdered her son and now thinks she has rights. The official joked with the other guards about this outside of Donna's door. The official then said that Donna will learn that fancy white lady murderers have no rights here, and told Donna, "Do you see where you are? And do you see where I am? I'm out here because I'm not a murderer." That's a burn. Since that interaction, some of the jail staff have treated Donna with cruelty. She is sometimes denied access to her necessary blood pressure medication, and she has been prevented from showering for days at a time. In the 15 days that Donna has been at Leon County Jail, she has only been permitted to call her husband once on November 28th for approximately 5 minutes while guards stood watch. It was only with the help and intervention of the state that this call took place. Donna has not been permitted to call her counsel at all. At one point, a psychiatrist working at the jail told Donna she does not belong in the solitary unit, and another jail official also told Donna the same thing. As a result of these cruel and inhumane conditions, Donna is becoming weaker and weaker every day, and because she does not have phone access, it's been impossible for her to contact her counsel or take part in her defense. Despite repeated attempts to call the jail, set up video visitation, and or set up in-person visitation, undersigned counsel has been unable to communicate with Donna since her transport to Leon County Jail. Both undersigned counsel and the state have tried to get help from the jail to no avail. Here's the argument. Donna's detention conditions violates her Sixth Amendment right to counsel. The Sixth Amendment to the United States Constitution guarantees the right to effective assistance of counsel. This right attaches as soon as an individual is arrested and held to answer criminal charges. The right to consult with legal counsel about being released on bond, entering a plea, negotiating and accepting a plea agreement, going to trial, testifying at trial, locating trial witnesses, and other decisions confronting the detained suspect whose innocence is presumed is a right linked to the legitimacy of our criminal justice system. It is crucial that Donna be able to participate in her defense. Donna is charged with very serious offenses, and this case involves years of investigation and enormous amounts of discovery. The state has already disclosed a witness list including hundreds of witnesses, as well as hundreds of pages of extensive financial records, photographs, recordings, and wiretaps, call records, cell phone and email account extractions, iCloud extractions, toll records, interview recordings, deposition documents, letters, police reports, jail calls, and other documents. Donna must participate in her defense by reviewing and discussing the evidence in this case with her attorney, which is impossible when she is refused communication with her attorney and left in solitary cell while her health rapidly declines. Donna therefore respectfully requests the court grant the requested relief in order to preserve her Sixth Amendment rights. Donna's detention conditions are unconstitutionally punitive. The United States Supreme Court has made clear that the purpose of pretrial detention is regulatory and not punitive. In our society, liberty is the norm, and detention prior to trial or without trial is the carefully limited exception. She's charged with murder, so pretrial detention is pretty much a given, just saying. The Supreme Court has explained that a court must decide whether the condition is imposed for the purpose of punishment or whether it is but an incident of some other legitimate governmental purpose. Absent a showing of an express intent to punish on the part of detention facility officials, that determination generally will turn on whether an alternative purpose to which the restriction may rationally be connected is assignable for it and whether it appears excessive in relation to the alternative purpose assigned to it. If a condition of detention is not reasonably related to a legitimate goal, if it is arbitrary or purposeless, a court permissibly may infer that the purpose of the governmental action is punishment that may not constitutionally be inflicted upon detainees. Here, some jail officials are intentionally punishing Donna, even though she has not been convicted of any crime in violation of her 5th and 14th Amendment rights to due process. Instead of providing her actual medical care, the jail has shown deliberate indifference to Donna's medical needs by denying Donna her necessary blood pressure medication, not allowing her to shower, and letting her become weaker and weaker as she sits in her cell naked all day with nothing but a mattress on the floor. Such conditions do not further any legitimate goal and do not serve any regulatory purpose. Some officials at the jail do not believe that Donna belongs in the direct observation unit. Moreover, officials at TGK Miami confirmed Donna did not need to be in a direct observation unit. There is no reason, medical or otherwise, why she should not be in a normal part of the jail where she would have access to counsel and the ability to speak to her family. On a footnote here, even if this fact pattern occurred at the post-conviction stage, such treatment would constitute a violation of Ms. Adelson's Eighth Amendment rights, as deliberate indifference to serious medical needs of prisoners constitutes the unnecessary infliction of pain. Given the highly publicized nature of this case, the years of publicity on social media and national television, and especially the reporting in Tallahassee, which is a small community, the tensions are high, and the community has taken a position contrary to Donna, which has affected her constitutional right to effective counsel and her right against cruel and unusual punishment. This is not fair. It's not up to any particular person at the jail to decide whether Donna is guilty or not. That will be decided by a jury at trial. It is unconstitutional to punish her before her case is put before a jury. The requested relief, in order to prevent further constitutional violations, Donna respectfully requests this court enjoin the Leon County Jail from subjecting her to her current conditions of confinement and direct the Leon County Jail to place Donna in a unit where she can prepare for trial and speak to her family, or conduct an independent psychological evaluation in order to be placed in a different unit of the jail where she can properly prepare for trial and speak to her family. Alternatively, she requests to be released on house arrest coupled with standard conditions of pretrial release. Undersigned counsel has conferred with ASA Georgia Kappelman, advised that the state defers to this court regarding enjoining the Leon County Jail from subjecting her to her current conditions of confinement and directing the Leon County Jail to place Donna in a unit where she can prepare for trial and speak to her family. The state does not oppose an independent psychological evaluation. The state opposes Donna's release from pretrial detention, obviously. So that's it. That's the filing. So Donna says prison's not pleasant. I have a whole series on what it's like for first timers in jail, and I'll post the links to that playlist in the description as well. I have a contact who is a first-time offender who is in for life for murder in California. I think obviously we know that Donna feels pretty entitled in life, and she's led a very nice life, a very wealthy life that a lot of us would dream of having. But when you're accused of being part of a plan to hire people to kill your son-in-law so you can be closer to your grandkids, this is what you get. No matter how much money you have, no matter how many years you avoided arrest, it got you. And now you have to go through the motions that any other citizen of this country would have to go through when they're accused of murder. Obviously, Donna will not be home for the holidays, and she's going to celebrate in the Pokey. You have to wonder, what's Wendy and Harvey thinking about all this? Are they shaking in their boots? Charlie's been convicted. Donna's innocent until proven guilty, but we've seen the evidence in this case. I don't think it's unusual when you have somebody, especially in their 70s, who is not used to the jail life, really have a hard time thriving. I don't think this is going to be a quick process for Donna. She may want a speedy trial just to see if she can get this over with. Maybe in her mind, she thinks that she's going to get off of this. What do you guys think? Do you think she'll want a speedy trial? Or do you think she's going to waive it and give her attorneys time to come up with something? Let me know what you think in the comments. We are going to do a little bit of Jeff's interview with the police. I think Jeff really comes across as a very solid dude. He told the investigator right off the bat, just pry away. I think it's also interesting and a really good reminder, some things that come out in the first and the second interview. What you hear from somebody about another person when they have an axe to grind isn't always accurate. You know, the first interview, he really lays bare his thoughts about Danny, but by the second interview and a few days removed from it, and he's had time to think over things and analyze things, he comes to the realization that the way Wendy painted Danny to her might not have been really who he was. That was the version of Danny that Wendy wanted Jeff to see, because you get him on your side and then you have an ally in your corner. I think he pegs the Adelsons right out of the gate. Another thing was, I was watching some of Wendy's testimony at Charlie's trial, And the way she talks about Dan, when the prosecutor would ask her a question about Dan, she would always have to throw in something negative about Dan pretty much every time his name came up and she had to answer a question directly related to him. It is a pattern. I lost count of how many times she was just answering a direct question, but had to throw in there something negative of how he caused a situation or how he was difficult. A professional victim does that. Wendy definitely seems like one. But back to Jeff's interview. He's a graduate of Florida State. He moved to Arizona in 2008. Then he moved back to Tallahassee in 2013. He met Wendy in September of 2013, just about a month after moving back. They were set up by Jane. That's a mutual friend of theirs. She was the one in the interview room with Wendy for a period of time. Jeff got an email about Danny being shot, and he called Jane on the phone. They spoke around 5 minutes. He said to Jane, I don't know if I should call Wendy or not. This is way more important than a stupid no contact email. Jane suggested that he might text her. So he did. He texted her Saturday the 19th at 2 p.m. That's the day Danny died in the hospital, just between midnight and 1 a.m. He told her he cared for her and the kids, and if they needed anything, just to let him know that he was always there for her. She didn't text back, but he knew she was texting because when he was on the phone with Jane, she said, oh, Wendy's texting me. He also sent the boys a book about bereavement from Amazon. That was the last time he ever reached out to Wendy. He says, obviously, they're currently estranged. They began dating casually in the fall. Wendy was dating other people. After Christmas break, things got more serious. And then by March of 2014, they're pretty much exclusively dating. He says nobody's been around Wendy more than him in the last 6 months. 80 or 90% of the time in the evenings when the boys were home, he was there. And he almost always slept over when the boys were with Danny. They ran into some problems in May and June of 2013. And then he says, this is going to be public. That's effed up. He said he wanted to work it out. She did not. He said he was in love with her, so it made it very hard. He said it was like they were co-parenting the boys, and that made the split even rougher for him. He said when Wendy was in South Florida, she was completely miserable. I'm kind of assuming this is that 2-week time she was down for her dad Harvey's 70th birthday. He said Wendy gets anxious and depressed and she has her baggage. They didn't have much contact while she was gone. He said in the 14 days that she was down there, she called him maybe 3 times. He had not heard her as anxious and upset and depressed as she was this trip. The investigator says to Jeff, you said Wendy can put men under a spell. He said, I was caught. He asked if there's any other man who's just kind of out there that maybe doesn't seem normal. And Jeff said he thought maybe Wendy had somebody in South Florida because when she was there, she really wouldn't return his calls. And he said she goes to South Florida a lot. He said there's a weird pattern of behavior, so that made him suspicious that maybe she had somebody else in South Florida she was seeing. I thought it was interesting how he notices she is different when she's there with her family, as opposed to being in Tallahassee with him. He said that he was really upset about the estrangement from Wendy, so he called some friends and they said, look, just get in your car and drive. So he was going to Tennessee. He stayed in an Atlanta suburb Thursday night. Then Friday, he drove to Tennessee. He had just gotten back into town at the time of this interview, which, by the way, was on July 21st of 2014, 3 days after Dan was shot. He wanted to talk off the record, and the investigator just says, look, we're trying to solve a murder. And then Jeff says, if it were me, I would be investigating Charlie Adelson. I mean, this comes within the first 10 minutes or so of this interview. Boom. Here we are in 2023, and Charlie Adelson just got convicted. The investigator asked, why would it be pertinent to investigate Charlie Adelson? Jeff said he was very angry about Danny. And if he was in front of you, he would just set off your radar. He said he set his off. And Jeff said he used to do juvenile justice and forensic psychiatry. And Charlie set his radar off. He said he's weird. He hates Danny. And Wendy told him that Charlie had considered all the options possible to take care of this problem. Wendy asked Jeff if she could tell him something confidential. She said, I think Charlie looked into some options. And this was last summer, by the way. So the summer before Dan was shot and killed, he said there was a petition to relocate and it was denied. He said the family wants her back there so bad. So Jeff goes on to explain that Charlie is a successful dentist, but he reeks of antisocial behavior. He says, I could be 100% wrong. I wouldn't want to miss that if I were investigating, though. He doesn't remember exactly what Wendy said, but Charlie looked into the amount of money it would take to have someone killed. Charlie has several practices, a Ferrari, and he has lots of resources. Jeff met Charlie in March of 2014. He said they were in a hot tub. Jeff had just met Charlie literally about an hour before. Wendy and Charlie were talking. Jeff said that Charlie moves money around. He puts things in other people's names, possibly some tax fraud going on there. He said Charlie isn't doing things the right way. And he said Charlie was really kind of clear about that. In the hot tub, he said, I put this in mom's name. I put this in dad's name. He said, I think you should know this if you're going to investigate Charlie. Jeff says that Charlie talked in the hot tub about sex acts he did with his girlfriend to punish her for bad behavior. And he talked about this in front of Wendy. Jeff said he didn't know what to do. He's like, I just met Charlie. It was so weird. He said, so if you're looking at somebody, don't miss Charlie. He said he can see Charlie doing this without Wendy knowing and that he's very protective of her. He says Charlie is arrogant, cocky, narcissistic, and he has very little empathy for other people. He said, unless this is some kind of a botched burglary, Charlie popped in his head within 20 seconds of reading that email about Dan being shot and killed. He said to give context, they were planning last summer how to manipulate the divorce proceedings. He said they fed the kids bacon, even though Danny wanted to keep the kids kosher. We also know that was something that happened at the wedding. We talked about that in the first episode. The family is so unhealthily enmeshed that Wendy is not really an adult. When she goes to South Florida, they don't even trust her to drive along with the kids, so they come to Tallahassee and drive down with her. He said it's not a normal family. It's not like Wendy is 35 and has 2 kids. She's still considered the baby in that family, and Charlie is very fiercely protective of her. He thinks Charlie is a more likely scenario than some kind of a love triangle or this being a jealousy thing. Another investigator comes in and jokes and says, who done it? And the other investigator says he thinks that we should look into Charlie. But Jeff does pipe in and say, I don't think he would have done it, by the way. He's really rich. He has friends on both sides of the tracks, and he's really street smart. He heard Charlie say out loud, I could kill that MFer. He said, I've said it out loud too, but I didn't do it. They ask about the other brother, Rob. Jeff immediately shakes his head no, says no way. Charlie would get some seedy guys from the Cuban neighborhood to do it. He tells the other investigator who just came in that Wendy said just last summer when her petition to relocate was about to be denied, that Charlie looked into how much it would cost to have somebody killed. Wendy said it in a very dead serious, chilling, uncomfortable kind of way, not even a hint that it was joking. He said they want her down in South Florida so bad, so enmeshed, so unhealthy. Jeff asked Wendy if she could just up and move, even if they had been dating for a couple of years. Wendy said, I can't because of Danny. She said something to the effect of it would be convenient if Danny wasn't around anymore. He also says that Wendy lies. There's been a lot of guys since September. She drops out of sight when she's in South Florida, so he wondered if there was somebody there. And she would be really weird when she would come back to South Florida, especially romantically. And for the most part, she would not let Jeff come with her to South Florida, which is why he was suspicious there was somebody else there. He did go down that one time. That's the one time he met Charlie. They were in Immokalee and drove to Charlie's and stayed around 4 hours. The investigator asked, why are you at Immokalee? He said it was an alternative spring break for FSU kids, and they go and help farmers during spring break. He said Wendy never wanted to be in Tallahassee. She came there with Danny. They were supposed to be there only for a year and move on. Jeff said that Dan had this job at the University of Miami. Jeff says Dan was an a-hole, lost his job, and said, I'll just go back to FSU. He said Dan was abrasive, but a great scholar, but they let him go. And Jeff said Danny must have worked really hard to lose that job. Again, remember, he's still sort of very much enamored with Wendy, even during this interview. And after that couple of days of kind of chewing on things, he comes back with a little bit of a different tone about Danny, where I guess he talked to people that knew him personally and realized he's not this big bad monster that Wendy painted him to be. I think it's a very common thing when you have a new boyfriend and you have an ex that you don't particularly like. You're going to make them out to be the villain and you're just the victim. And I think that's really what happened here, and Jeff got roped into it. Dan's doing great as a professor of law. He said Wendy gets a really crappy job she doesn't like, and she doesn't like the area. Never wanted to live there, and said her dislike of Tallahassee was literally a daily conversation. He would try to encourage her and show her the beautiful parts of Tallahassee or remind her about this or that. There was no way that he could change her way of thinking about hating Tallahassee. He said, however, when they were in Miami together that one time, she really just lit up. The investigator asked, what reasons did Wendy give him for the divorce? And Jeff says, I can give you a couple of examples. When they would drive from Tallahassee to Miami before they had kids and then as a family, he said Danny would work on his computer. He said Wendy was required to drive, and if she talked to Danny, he would hush her. Jeff said Danny was a total control freak, emotionally abusive, and controlled all the finances. He said when Wendy was going to marry Danny, her friends told her not to. He was the biggest a-hole they've ever met, but she got caught up in the Harvard law elite world that he lived in. And Jeff said, I get it. I just got divorced last year. He married the wrong woman. They bonded over marrying the wrong people, essentially. He said Wendy and Danny's marriage was bad from day one. And by the second year, it was awful. And then having kids hoping to fix things, it just made things worse. Jeff said that Danny was an absent father. He would come home at 9 o'clock every night, play with the kids for 10 minutes, according to Wendy. And then that was it. Wendy said she did everything. And then when they got divorced, he wanted full custody of the boys. The investigator said, obviously, Danny had his side too, and Jeff agrees. He said that Danny was controlling and he doesn't want to speak ill of the dead, but it's bizarre to read all the comments about how great of a guy he was because he wasn't well liked. And he was vicious when it came to the legal aspect of the divorce, fighting Wendy in the courts. He said Charlie and her parents hated Danny, and the investigator asks why. And he said in person, Danny was arrogant and just kind of unlikable to a lot of people. He would talk down to people. And Jeff said when he met Danny for the first time, he insulted him 3 to 4 times in a very subtle way. He wasn't in your face about it, but more passive aggressive. He moves on to talk about Wendy, and he says he's been shocked at how easily Wendy just lied to his face. Her and Charlie have this sociopathic kind of thing where it doesn't seem to bother them at all. He said Wendy's parents are weird, strange people, but he can't imagine them being involved. He said in 9 months of dating Wendy, they probably said 20 words to him. And he said they're just a screwed up family. He said Charlie doesn't follow the rules, and that was kind of his life. He goes to South America. He sees prostitutes. He's got 3 girlfriends at all times, and he kind of rotates them, and none of them know about any of the others. He said that's not a crime, but with the ease of how Charlie did it, it shows he has no empathy for other people's feelings. The investigator asked if Charlie was deceitful, and Jeff said the whole family, really. When Wendy didn't have to work, she was in South Florida 30 to 40% of the time, and that was a problem in their relationship because when she had time off, he wanted to spend time with her. He said she was teaching around 4 hours a week, but other than that, her time was her own. That was the end of that interview. He comes back on July 23rd. He said he thought of a few things that might be useful. He said he hasn't seen Wendy in around 23, 24 days at this point. He's not under her spell as much. He's starting to see things more clearly. And it's been a month since they were intimate and a month since she was controlling him that way. Jeff said he doesn't have any major mental health issues, but he's been seeing a therapist that he previously saw when he was going through his divorce. He said he spent around $2,000 trying to figure out how to deal with Wendy because she's been hard to handle. He said his therapist has been concerned for months that Wendy was a sociopath, but he said he still loves Wendy. He was under her spell, and if she called tomorrow, he probably would go back to her. But he said, looking back, some things are strange. He said, Wendy has this public persona. She's a really good actress, very charismatic, and in every social circle in Tallahassee, pretty much everybody there knew her. He said, but as far as people who actually spend time with her, it was himself, Danny, and Daniel Sack. That was the guy that she had dated that moved, I think, up to Massachusetts. That's the whole coffee shop thing we talked about in a previous episode. He said Wendy has no sense of guilt, no empathy. She's hypersensitive to criticism and a total pathological liar. But he felt bad. He's saying all these things because he still loves Wendy, even with her flaws, and he would have stayed with her. He said, but if you look back at Danny's legal documents during the divorce, he's constantly talking about her systematic pattern of deception, how she lies all the time. And she once told me, I have a really hard time telling the truth when it's inconvenient or unpleasant. I lie all the time. He said, I know Wendy didn't pull the trigger, but the more I thought about how much I was manipulated, I feel kind of creeped out right now. I know the paper says she's not a suspect, but as an accessory, it makes a lot of sense. Behind the curtain, she was a total train wreck. And my psychologist would say, man, she just meets the checklist of a narcissistic sociopath. He said, I never saw that when I was under the spell, but I've had people for 3 to 4 months trying to convince me you're dating someone with real severe sociopathic tendencies. She said she's high functioning and attractive, but still has these characteristics. Then he goes on to say everybody was telling him what a nice guy Danny was. He said, but in their house, meaning his and Wendy's, Danny was seen as a psychopathic, stalking, emotionally abusive, controlling jerk. That's Wendy's assessment of him. And he said, that's what I thought. I just believed her, but nobody else has backed that up, essentially. Jeff said that Danny was an arrogant academic, but that's not uncommon. There's a lot of professors that are arrogant. He said, I hear people say he was a good man, a good father. He was really upset with Wendy, but I'm starting to understand why. There's some timing things that don't make sense. He said he hopes that he's wrong about this and maybe they'll find that this was some disgruntled student of Danny's. But he said he wants Wendy and the boys to have a good life in South Florida. He said he still loves them, he misses them, and he's pretty heartbroken overall. He said when he confronted her in Gainesville, he was hard on her. He was mad. He said she was busted because she knows she was juggling him and this other guy, Daniel. He also mentions there was no picture of him on her Facebook, no picture of him in her house. And he said that upset him because they had been dating for 9 months. And that's just really weird. It is weird. Yeah. When people don't put a picture of their significant other on their Facebook after you've been together nearly a year, big red flag. When Wendy went to South Florida for those 14 days, the whole time she's down there, she's miserable and not really available. We're talking about getting back together, seeing each other. Wendy comes back in town. They go on a date. He said it was awkward, but they were holding hands. And there was talk about the future. They're going to spend a lot of time together, work this out. And that's what he thought they had decided to do. He said it gets really strange from there and it makes me suspicious. On Tuesday, she called me at 2 or 3 in the afternoon and said, hey, I'm locked out of my house. We were going to see each other that night. So Jeff said, okay, what are you going to do? She said, I'm trying to get a key, but I'm probably going to need a locksmith. So Jeff said, I'll just come over. We'll have our date on your front porch. He said she was super sweet and friendly. It seemed like everything was okay. Wendy said, I'd love it if you would come keep me company. He said they're calling each other baby, all that stuff. She ends up getting into her house and they went to yoga together. He said, we meet there. I show up around 7 and she's completely different. She was gone. He said, I don't know, maybe she talked to her friends and they said dump him and she decided that's how she was going to do it. He said it may have nothing to do with this case, but he said, I'd be curious to know who she talked to between 3 and 7 p.m. because after days of us talking about working it out, it turned on a second. He said it gets a little stranger from there. We'll walk into the car and it's awkward small talk. She's done. It's clear to him. And she directly asked Jeff if he's going to be in town on Friday. He said, why does she care if I'm here on Friday? I say, maybe it's kind of up in the air. He said it really wasn't up in the air. He didn't want to seem desperate. But ultimately, if Wendy wanted to hang out that weekend, he was going to stay in town and not go to Tennessee. He said, but she was really interested. Why is it up in the air? But he said the last in-person exchange he had with her is, oh, are you going to be here Friday? He said, I thought you should know that. It may mean nothing. It was kind of strange to me. And then the no contact thing was strange. Usually you send an email and say, look, I need time to think. But she was very strict about the no contact thing. He said, it's almost like she didn't want to be in front of me. The investigator said, maybe she wanted time to think and you not try to change your mind. And Jeff says, yeah, maybe that's possible. But maybe Wendy knew something was going to go down and didn't want to be around me because I read her pretty well. And I just busted her on a whole host of lies. And then he says, oh, I don't know if you guys have seen this yet. So he gets his phone out. And he said, this struck me as strange. Have you seen this picture? It's a Facebook profile picture of Wendy that she uploaded Thursday, the day before Dan was shot. Wendy looks really good in it, but not her kids. He said, in the community, and not for me, people have been speculating this is a Photoshop picture. Her dad does photography stuff. She looks better than normal. And if you know you're going to be all over the media, that's how Wendy would want to look. He said, it may sound crazy to you, just something to chew on. He said there are other pictures in this set where the kids are actually looking at the camera and smiling, but she chooses the one where they're not. He said, wouldn't you want your kids to look good in your Facebook profile picture? So that's where I'm at in these interviews. And I'd said I'm going to skim through, but man, I just got hooked in. It's a rabbit hole to go down. The next episode for this will continue and we'll finish up his police interviews. Then we'll jump into Luis Rivera's. But that's it for today. Hope you guys have a good rest of your afternoon and evening. We'll see you soon.